Sophia first met Alex at a charity gala her family had been hosting for years. It was an evening she cherished, not because of the grandeur or the glittering chandeliers, but for the connections it nurtured among friends and neighbors. Her grandmother had always emphasized the importance of giving back, and Sophia felt proud to carry on that legacy. She was deep in conversation with a local farmer about organizing a fundraiser for the school library when Alex appeared. Dressed in a tailored suit that seemed a little too polished for the rural setting, he cut an impressive figure. His easy charm and sharp wit quickly captured the room's attention. When he approached Sophia, complimenting her dedication and passion, she felt a spark. He spoke of his admiration for community work, though his words felt rehearsed, as if borrowed from a book about how to impress someone like her. Over the weeks that followed, Alex courted Sophia with an intensity that both thrilled and puzzled her. He wasn't like the other men she'd known. Where they spoke of traditions and family, Alex had big plans. He talked about building empires, about making the most of every opportunity, and about living a life of endless success. It was different, yes, but also exciting. She thought perhaps their differences could complement each other. But Alex had his own reasons for pursuing Sophia. While her family's wealth had waned over the years, the family name still carried weight. More importantly, Sophia was the favorite granddaughter of the family matriarch, who owned a sprawling estate, prime farmland, and the historic family mansion. Alex saw potential, a strategic investment in a future he envisioned for himself. He admired Sophia's kindness and grace, but he also calculated what being with her could bring. Sophia's mother, Margaret, saw through Alex almost immediately. She watched the way he seemed too quick to flatter, too eager to ingratiate himself into conversations that weren't his to join. When Sophia announced, with glowing excitement, that Alex had proposed, Margaret's heart sank. "Sophia, dear," Margaret said gently, choosing her words carefully as they sat together at the patio one warm evening, "are you certain about this? He's charming, yes, but charm can be a veil. Do you really know what's behind it?" Sophia bristled. "Mom, why can't you just be happy for me? Alex is different, yes, but maybe that's what I need. He believes in me, in my potential." Margaret sighed, her fingers tightening around her teacup. "It's not about being different, Sophia. It's about what he values. What matters to him. Are they the same things that matter to you?" Sophia set her jaw, frustrated by her mother's reluctance to see the man she was falling in love with. "I'm not a child, Mom. I know what I'm doing. I love him." Margaret didn't want to push her daughter away. She reached for Sophia's hand and squeezed it gently. "You're right. It's your choice. And I won't interfere. Just promise me one thing, take your time, and don't lose sight of what truly matters to you." Sophia nodded, though her heart was heavy. She hated disappointing her mother but was certain she was making the right choice. In Alex, she saw ambition and drive, qualities she admired, even if she didn't fully share them. She believed love could bridge their differences, that together they could create something meaningful. The wedding was grander than Sophia would have preferred, but Alex insisted. He argued it was a way to show the world what they were building, to start their lives on the right note. She gave in, thinking it was a small compromise for the man she loved. As she walked down the aisle, her mother's face was a mixture of joy and concern. Margaret clapped with the rest of the guests but couldn't shake the feeling that her daughter was stepping into a storm she wasn't ready for. Sophia, however, was radiant. For all her mother's doubts, she believed in Alex. She believed in the future they could create together. After all, wasn't marriage about compromise, about bringing two worlds together and building something stronger? What Sophia didn't see were the calculations Alex was making, even as they said their vows. He held her hand and smiled, but in the back of his mind, he was already strategizing. He thought of the family fortune, the influence they could wield, and the opportunities he could seize. Sophia wasn't just a partner to him, she was a key to a door he was determined to unlock. In the glow of their early marriage, Sophia was too busy trying to merge their lives to notice the cracks. She worked hard to show Alex the joy of simple things, helping at the food pantry, hosting small dinners for neighbors, volunteering at the school. Alex humored her at first, but it became clear he didn't share her enthusiasm. His attention drifted toward networking events, business plans, and conversations about market trends. He wanted more, always more. Arguments became a regular occurrence. Sophia felt like she was speaking a different language, one Alex had no interest in learning. He accused her of being small-minded, of not understanding the need to climb higher. She countered that a life of ambition without heart wasn't a life worth living. They always managed to reconcile, but the gaps between them grew wider with each fight. Still, Sophia clung to the belief that love could overcome anything. She focused on the good in Alex, the moments when he was kind, when he made her laugh, when he seemed to soften. She told herself those moments were enough, that they could be the foundation for a stronger future. Margaret watched from the sidelines, her concern growing. She wanted to intervene, but Sophia's words from that evening on the porch held her back. It was Sophia's choice, and Margaret knew she had to let her daughter find her own way. Sophia's world would soon change, though she didn't know it yet. When her grandmother's health began to decline, Sophia poured herself into caring for the woman who had always been her guiding light. Alex was polite but distant, more interested in the whispers of what the matriarch's passing might mean for their finances. And as Sophia stood by her grandmother's bedside, holding her hand and sharing stories from her childhood, Alex was already envisioning what the will might reveal. To him, it was a pivotal moment. To Sophia, it was a painful goodbye. They couldn't have been further apart, yet Sophia didn't see it, not yet. Alex, day after day, seemed more impatient. He visited the hospital when he could fit it into his schedule, but his presence felt obligatory, his mind clearly elsewhere. "How is she?" he would ask, his tone polite but detached. "She's hanging on," Sophia would reply, her voice tired but steady. "Just let me know if there's anything I need to take care of," he would say, then quickly change the subject to a meeting or event he needed to attend. One evening, after a particularly long day at the hospital, Sophia returned home to find Alex poring over spreadsheets. He barely looked up as she walked through the door. "You've been spending a lot of time there," he said, his tone casual but edged with something she couldn't quite place. "She needs me," Sophia replied, setting down her bag. "I get that," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But you can't ignore everything else forever. There's a lot to think about, especially with, what happens next." Sophia stared at him, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean, what happens next?" He hesitated, then gestured vaguely. "The estate, the assets. There's going to be a lot to sort out." Her chest tightened, a mix of anger and disbelief rising in her throat. "She's still here, Alex," she said, her voice shaking. "She's not just a list of things to divide." "I didn't mean it like that," he said quickly, but the damage was done. Sophia turned away, unwilling to let him see the tears welling in her eyes. As the weeks passed, her grandmother's condition worsened. Sophia stayed by her side, holding her hand and whispering words of love and gratitude. The hospital room became a quiet world of its own, a place where time seemed to stand still. And then, one evening, her grandmother's breathing slowed, her hand growing limp in Sophia's grasp. She was gone. The funeral was a somber affair, filled with family and friends sharing memories and offering condolences. Sophia stood strong, her heart heavy but grateful for the time she had been given. Alex, however, seemed distracted. He offered polite smiles and shook hands, but his attention often drifted. Sophia noticed him speaking with her uncles in hushed tones, his expression a mix of curiosity and something darker. In the days that followed, the family prepared for the reading of the will. For Sophia, it was a matter of honoring her grandmother's wishes, of finding closure. But for Alex, it was an event he had been eagerly anticipating. His demeanor shifted, his impatience barely concealed as the day drew closer. Sophia found herself retreating into her thoughts, her grief still raw but mixed with a growing unease about Alex's behavior. She didn't know what the will would reveal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Alex's priorities were far from where they should be. For now, she focused on her memories, on the love her grandmother had given her, and on finding the strength to face whatever came next. The day of the will reading arrived under a gray sky, fitting for the somber gathering. Sophia sat quietly in the lawyer's office, her hands folded in her lap. Around her were family members, some tearful, others stoic, all waiting to hear the matriarch's final wishes. For Sophia, it was less about material gain and more about understanding what her grandmother had envisioned for the family she had loved so deeply. Alex, sitting beside her, seemed unusually focused, his leg bouncing in restless anticipation. The lawyer began reading, his voice calm and deliberate. He outlined specific bequests to the matriarch's children and other grandchildren, shares of the estate, parcels of land, financial gifts, all divided with thoughtful care. When Sophia's name was finally mentioned, the room stilled. The lawyer explained that she had been left the family's antique toy shop, a small building tucked away in the heart of town. For a moment, Sophia was transported back to her childhood, to the countless afternoons spent organizing shelves and listening to her grandmother's stories about the shop's history. A soft smile formed on her lips. But the reaction in the room was less kind. Murmurs rippled through the gathered family, some exchanging incredulous glances. "The favorite granddaughter," someone whispered, "and all she gets is a dusty old toy shop." Sophia's uncles looked sympathetic, while her cousins seemed more amused than anything else. Beside her, Alex stiffened. His jaw clenched, and a flicker of anger flashed in his eyes. He leaned closer to Sophia and hissed, "That's it? The toy shop?" Sophia tried to quiet him with a gentle shake of her head, but Alex's frustration boiled over. "Excuse me," he interrupted, his voice sharp. The lawyer paused, taken aback. "Are we seriously going to pretend this is fair? She was her favorite. Everyone knows that. This is ridiculous." The room fell silent, the air thick with discomfort. Sophia felt her cheeks flush as all eyes turned to her and Alex. "Alex, stop," she whispered urgently, but he ignored her. "This isn't right," Alex continued, directing his frustration at the lawyer. "Sophia has always been the one closest to her grandmother. How does it make sense that she gets left with something so insignificant?" Sophia's hands trembled as she reached for his arm, trying to pull him back into his seat. "Please, Alex, that's enough," she said softly, her voice breaking. He finally sat down, but his expression remained hard, his anger barely contained. Sophia stared at her lap, mortified. She had always known Alex could be intense, but this was something else. For the rest of the reading, she struggled to focus, her mind swirling with a mix of embarrassment, confusion, and hurt. When they returned home, the tension exploded. Alex slammed the door behind them, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "I can't believe this," he fumed, running a hand through his hair. "After everything we've done. Everything you've done. And this is all she leaves you?" Sophia stood near the kitchen counter, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Alex, it's not about what she left me," she said quietly. "It's about the memories, the connection. The shop meant something to her. It means something to me." "Oh, come on, Sophia," Alex snapped, his voice rising. "You can't seriously be okay with this. That shop is worthless. It's a drain, not an inheritance." She flinched at his words, her heart sinking. "It's not worthless to me," she replied, her voice trembling. "That shop is where I grew up, where I learned so much about myself, about our family. It's part of who I am." Alex scoffed, throwing his hands up in exasperation. "And what about who we are? What about the life we were supposed to build together?" You think you can do that with a toy shop? Be realistic, Sophia. You're wasting your potential. Her throat tightened, tears threatening to spill. You mean my potential to fit into your idea of success? I thought we were building something together, Alex. But it's clear now, you were only ever interested in what my family could give you. He stopped pacing, turning to face her with a coldness that sent a shiver down her spine. Don't act like this is just about me, he said, his tone sharp. You've always been stuck in your little world, clinging to traditions and ideals that don't mean anything in the real world. I need someone who sees the bigger picture, someone who wants more. Alex fell quiet for a moment, his silence louder than any words. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. I just can't do this anymore, Sophia. I need a partner who shares my ambition, my drive. This isn't working. Sophia stared at him, her chest aching. So that's it, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You're leaving because I didn't inherit what you wanted? Her tears finally broke free, streaming down her face as she realized the depth of his betrayal. The man she had loved, the man she had fought to build a life with, had only ever seen her as a means to an end. Fine, she said, her voice cracking but resolute. If that's what you need, then go. But don't expect me to apologize for who I am. He nodded, his expression unreadable, and walked toward the door. For a moment, Sophia thought he might turn back, might say something to soften the blow. But he didn't. The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the empty house. Sophia sank into a chair, her body trembling as the weight of the moment settled over her. She had always believed in compromise, in working through differences, in love conquering all. But now, sitting alone in the home they had shared, she realized that love without respect, without understanding, wasn't love at all. It was something hollow, something that could crumble at the first sign of hardship. She wiped her tears, taking a deep, shaky breath. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice reminded her that this wasn't the end. It was a painful chapter, yes, but not the whole story. She thought of her grandmother, of the lessons she had taught her about resilience and strength. The road ahead felt uncertain, but Sophia knew one thing for sure: she wouldn't let this break her. Not now, not ever. Sophia returned to her childhood home carrying little more than a few suitcases and the weight of heartbreak. The familiar creak of the front door welcomed her as her mother, Margaret, pulled her into a tight embrace. The warmth of that hug threatened to undo her, but she held it together, determined not to fall apart. For days, she drifted through the house like a ghost, avoiding her mother's concerned glances and the soft inquiries from well-meaning friends who stopped by to check on her. The whispers in town stung. People pitied her, calling her the one who got left with nothing. She overheard fragments of conversations at the market, snippets of judgment dressed up as sympathy. Poor Sophia. All those years, and he just walked away. Another voice chimed in, and for what? A toy shop. It's sad, really. She wanted to scream that she wasn't sad, that her worth wasn't measured by what she had, or didn't have, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she buried herself in small tasks, sweeping the porch, organizing the attic, cooking meals she didn't feel like eating. Her mother tried to coax her out of her shell, but Sophia wasn't ready. Not yet. The toy shop lingered in her mind, a distant memory she wasn't sure she could face. It had been years since she'd stepped inside, though the smell of polished wood and old paper still lived vividly in her senses. She had loved that shop once, spending hours arranging displays, listening to her grandmother's stories about its history. But now, the thought of walking through those doors felt overwhelming, as if it were another piece of her past she wasn't ready to confront. It was Margaret who finally nudged her. One evening over dinner, her mother set down her fork and said, "You know, Sophia, the toy shop won't wait forever. Mr. Porter has been managing it all these years, but he's not getting any younger. If you don't visit, you might lose more than just time." Sophia hesitated, staring at her plate. I don't even know what I'd do with it, Mom. I'm not sure I can handle one more thing falling apart. Her mother reached across the table, taking her hand gently. It's not falling apart. And neither are you. The next morning, Sophia found herself standing in front of the toy shop, keys trembling in her hand. The sign above the door was faded, but the whimsical letters still brought a faint smile to her lips. The windows, though dusty, displayed an array of wooden trains, porcelain dolls, and miniature tea sets, each lovingly arranged. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door. The familiar jingle of the shop's bell brought a wave of memories crashing over her. The scent of aged wood and lacquer filled the air, just as it had when she was a child. Behind the counter stood Mr. Porter, the elderly manager her grandmother had trusted to run the shop. His face lit up when he saw her. "Sophia," he exclaimed, his voice warm and welcoming. "I was beginning to wonder when you'd come by." She managed a small smile, though her nerves prickled beneath the surface. "Hello, Mr. Porter. I'm sorry it's taken me so long." He waved off her apology, his gnarled hands busy straightening a stack of ledgers. "No need for that. You've been through a lot. But it's good to see you here." Sophia glanced around the shop, her eyes landing on the shelves filled with toys from another era. A small music box caught her attention, its delicate tune sparking a memory of her grandmother winding it up for her one rainy afternoon. Her chest tightened as she brushed a finger over its surface. "It looks just like it did when I was a kid," she said softly. Mr. Porter chuckled. "I've done my best to keep it the way your grandmother would have wanted. She cared deeply for this place, you know. Always said it was more than just a shop, it was a piece of the family." Sophia nodded, her throat tight. "I loved it here too. But now, I don't know. It feels like a lifetime ago." Mr. Porter gave her a knowing look, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Sometimes, the best way to move forward is to look back. Take your time, Sophia. There's no rush." Over the next few hours, she wandered through the aisles, letting herself be transported by the memories tied to each corner of the shop. She remembered unpacking boxes of toys with her grandmother, carefully arranging them on the shelves. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice, full of pride and affection, telling her about the origins of a hand-carved rocking horse or a rare marionette. But as much as the memories filled her with warmth, they also brought questions. Could she truly take this place on? Did she even want to? Running a toy shop wasn't exactly part of the life she had imagined for herself, but then again, neither was starting over after a divorce. Before she left, Mr. Porter stopped her at the door. "If you ever want to talk about the shop, or anything else, you know where to find me." "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. That night, as she sat on the porch with her mother, Sophia felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in weeks: possibility. She told Margaret about her visit, about the way the shop seemed to pull at her heart even as her doubts loomed large. Her mother listened without interruption, then said, "You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time." Sophia stared out at the stars, her thoughts tangled but not as heavy as before. The road ahead still felt uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a small sliver of hope. Perhaps the shop wasn't just a relic of her past. Perhaps it could be part of her future too. Sophia returned to the toy shop the following week, still unsure of what she would say or do but drawn back by something she couldn't quite name. Mr. Porter greeted her with the same warm smile, but there was a glint in his eyes, as though he'd been waiting for this visit. "I was hoping you'd come back," he said, motioning her toward the counter. "There's something I need to show you." Curiosity piqued, Sophia followed him as he walked toward the back of the shop. The familiar layout of shelves and display cases gave way to a small, unassuming door she'd never paid much attention to as a child. Mr. Porter fished a key from his pocket, a small, ornate thing that looked as though it belonged in one of the shop's antique displays. This, he said, holding up the key, was entrusted to me by your grandmother. She told me to guard it until the time came for you to take over. I think that time has arrived. Sophia blinked, startled. What's behind the door? Mr. Porter smiled, his voice soft but firm. Why don't you see for yourself? He handed her the key, and for a moment she hesitated, the weight of its significance settling over her. Finally, she stepped forward, her fingers trembling slightly as she unlocked the door. It creaked open, revealing a set of stairs leading downward into a dimly lit basement. As they descended, the air grew cooler, and the faint scent of cedar and age wafted up to meet them. At the bottom of the stairs was another door, this one larger and made of heavy wood reinforced with metal. Mr. Porter gestured for her to continue. With a deep breath, Sophia inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The door groaned as it swung open, revealing a room that took her breath away. It was as if the Met had built a room for a glistening collection of toys in her grandmother's old shop basement. Rows of shelves lined the walls, each meticulously organized and filled with toys unlike anything she had ever seen. There were delicate porcelain dolls with hand-painted features, intricate model trains, and gleaming carousel figurines. On a central table rested a collection of bejeweled trinkets, miniature carriages and soldiers, each sparkling under the warm light of the room's sconces. The details were exquisite, their craftsmanship hinting at a bygone era of opulence and artistry. Sophia stepped inside, her eyes wide as she took it all in. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mr. Porter followed her, his expression proud but reverent. "This is your grandmother's collection. She spent decades acquiring these pieces, some from auctions, others passed down through the family. Many of these toys are one of a kind, made by master craftsmen for royal families and aristocrats. That carriage there," he said, pointing to one of the bejeweled pieces, "was gifted to a European princess over 100 years ago." Sophia stared at the carriage, its delicate wheels inlaid with tiny gemstones. "Why didn't she ever tell me about this?" "She didn't want anyone to know," Mr. Porter explained. "She believed this collection was a safeguard, something to protect the family in hard times. But more than that, she wanted it to go to someone who understood its true value, not just its monetary worth, but its history, its stories. She wanted it to go to you." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The weight of her grandmother's trust, her foresight, was overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. Clearly the content of this room was worth a fortune, in more ways than one. "You don't have to say anything," Mr. Porter said gently. "Just think about what you want to do with it. Your grandmother believed in you, Sophia. She knew you'd make the right choice." For the next few hours, Sophia explored the room, running her fingers over the delicate surfaces of the toys and marveling at their beauty. Each piece seemed to tell its own story, a snapshot of a time and place she could only imagine. By the time she returned to the main shop, her mind was racing with possibilities. That evening, she sat on the porch with her mother, trying to put her thoughts into words. "I found something today," she began, her voice hesitant. She described the hidden room, the collection, the trust her grandmother had placed in her. Margaret listened quietly, her face softening with understanding. "Your grandmother always saw something special in you," she said. "She knew you'd find a way to honor her legacy." "I just don't know how," Sophia admitted. "It's so much more than I ever expected. I feel like I'll never be able to do it justice." "You already are," Margaret replied. "Just by caring enough to ask that question." Over the next few days, Sophia's thoughts began to take shape. The collection wasn't just a treasure trove, it was a piece of history, a testament to the artistry and imagination of generations past. She couldn't bear the thought of it being locked away, unseen and unappreciated. Slowly, an idea formed, a way to share the collection's beauty and significance while preserving the heart of the shop. She returned to the shop, a sense of determination settling over her. Standing in the middle of the room, she spoke aloud to Mr. Porter, who was dusting a nearby shelf. "I've decided. I want to turn the shop into a museum, a place where people can see the collection, learn its history, and maybe rediscover some of that childhood wonder." Mr. Porter set down his cloth, a smile spreading across his face. "Your grandmother would be so proud. And I think it's a wonderful idea." The following weeks were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Sophia worked tirelessly, researching each piece in the collection, consulting with local historians, and enlisting the help of skilled craftsmen to design new displays. She wanted the museum to feel magical, a place where visitors could step back in time and experience the joy and artistry her grandmother had cherished. As the opening day approached, the shop transformed before her eyes. The front windows now featured glimpses of the collection, drawing the attention of passers-by. Inside, the shelves were replaced with elegant glass cases, each showcasing a piece of the collection with detailed descriptions of its history. A small corner of the shop was reserved for children, filled with toys they could touch and play with, ensuring the space remained as welcoming and accessible as it had always been. On the eve of the museum's grand opening, Sophia stood in the middle of the shop, taking it all in. The air hummed with anticipation, but more than that, it felt alive in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of the importance of preserving and sharing the things that matter. For the first time in a long while, Sophia felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't just a way to honor her grandmother's memory, it was a way to build something meaningful, something that could inspire and connect people in ways she hadn't yet imagined. The grand opening of the toy museum arrived on a crisp morning, the sunlight glinting off the freshly cleaned windows of the shop. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, their curiosity piqued by the whispers of something extraordinary hidden in the heart of their town. Sophia stood inside, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves as she surveyed the transformed space. The polished glass cases gleamed under the soft lighting, each display telling a story of craftsmanship, history, and wonder. She had poured her heart into this moment, and now it was time to share it with the world. At precisely 10 o'clock, she unlocked the door, greeted by a gentle cheer from the crowd. Families, historians, and collectors stepped inside, their expressions shifting from mild interest to awe as they took in the intricate displays. A young boy tugged at his father's sleeve, pointing to a golden music box that played a delicate melody. Nearby, an older couple whispered to each other, marveling at the bejeweled miniature carriages. Sophia moved through the room, answering questions and sharing anecdotes about the pieces. She watched as people lingered in front of the displays, their faces lit with a sense of discovery. A historian who had traveled from the city spent nearly an hour examining a set of marionettes, carefully crafted with lifelike expressions and delicate fabrics. He later approached Sophia, his notebook brimming with sketches and notes. "You've done something remarkable here," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. "This collection isn't just rare, it's a window into a forgotten era. Thank you for preserving it so beautifully." Sophia felt her cheeks flush, but her smile was genuine. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot to know the collection resonates with people." As the day unfolded, the museum became a hive of activity. Children giggled in the interactive corner, while enthusiasts meticulously photographed the displays. An older woman approached Sophia, her eyes misty as she recounted how a toy carriage in one case reminded her of one she had as a child. "It's like stepping back in time," she said, clutching Sophia's hand. "Your grandmother must be so proud of you." By the end of the day, Sophia was exhausted but exhilarated. She locked the door behind the last visitor, leaning against it with a satisfied sigh. Mr. Porter, who had been quietly observing from the counter, gave her a nod of approval. "You've done it, Sophia," he said. "Your grandmother's legacy is alive and well." In the weeks that followed, the museum's reputation grew. Word spread quickly, bringing visitors from neighboring towns and beyond. Collectors wrote letters requesting private tours, while local schools inquired about field trips. Historians and journalists penned articles praising the museum for its attention to detail and its ability to capture the essence of a bygone era. Sophia's days were a blur of activity, but the work was fulfilling in a way she hadn't experienced before. She found joy in the little moments, the way a child's eyes lit up when they saw the intricate gears of a wind-up train in motion, or the quiet appreciation of a historian marveling at a piece he'd only read about in books. The museum had become more than just a collection of toys, it was a place where stories came to life. Financially, the museum quickly proved sustainable. Ticket sales alone provided a steady income, enough to cover expenses and begin thinking about future projects. Sophia added a small gift shop near the entrance, selling prints of the most popular pieces and replicas of simple, vintage-inspired toys. The community embraced the museum as a cultural gem, proud that their small town had become a destination for something so unique. One afternoon, as Sophia sorted through mail at the front desk, she found a letter with an unfamiliar seal. Inside was an invitation to a regional heritage conference, where she was being asked to speak about the importance of preserving historical artifacts. The recognition took her by surprise, but as she read the letter again, she realized how far she had come since the day she first unlocked the safe room. When she shared the news with her mother later that evening, Margaret's face lit up with pride. "You deserve this, Sophia," she said. "You've turned something ordinary into something extraordinary. It's no wonder people are noticing." Sophia felt a swell of gratitude as she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The road had been anything but smooth, filled with heartbreak and uncertainty, yet it had led to something she never could have imagined. The museum wasn't just a success, it was a reflection of her grandmother's values and her own determination to honor them. As the months passed, Sophia continued to refine the museum. She introduced guided tours, weaving stories of the toys' origins and their connection to history. She partnered with a local artisan to create custom displays that highlighted the artistry of the pieces, ensuring every visitor could appreciate their details. The museum's growing popularity brought new challenges, but Sophia met each one with the same quiet resilience that had carried her through the hardest times. One evening, as she closed up for the night, she stood in the middle of the room, taking in the quiet hum of the space. The cases glimmered softly under the lights, each toy a reminder of the love and care that had gone into its creation. She thought of her grandmother, of the trust she had placed in her to carry this legacy forward. In that moment, Sophia felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The museum had become something greater than she ever anticipated, a place where the past could inspire the present, where people could reconnect with the wonder of their childhoods. The sound of the clock chiming the hour broke her reverie, and she smiled to herself as she turned off the lights. Tomorrow would bring more visitors, more stories, more opportunities to share the beauty and history of the collection. As she locked the door and stepped into the cool evening air, Sophia realized she wasn't just rebuilding her life. She was creating something new, something that felt like it had always been waiting for her to find. Sophia first noticed the shift and a letter arrived from a high-profile publishing company. They wanted to collaborate on a coffee table book featuring the museum's most notable pieces, complete with their histories and high-resolution photographs. At first, the idea felt surreal. The toys were treasures, yes, but could they truly resonate beyond the museum's walls? Curiosity got the better of her, and she agreed to a meeting. The publisher's enthusiasm was infectious, and as they showed mock-ups of what the book might look like, Sophia began to see the potential. It wasn't just a book, it was a chance to share the collection's stories with an even wider audience. The deal was signed with careful stipulations about respecting the historical context of the toys, and work began immediately. As news of the project spread, more opportunities followed. A toy company approached her, proposing a line of replicas based on some of the collection's most popular items. At first, Sophia hesitated. She worried that replicating these pieces might cheapen their significance. But the company's representatives assured her they shared her vision of honoring the craftsmanship and legacy behind the toys. They presented prototypes of the replicas, handcrafted, detailed, and faithful to the originals. Sophia's heart softened as she saw the care they had taken. If this means more people can experience even a fraction of the joy these toys bring, she told Mr. Porter over tea one evening, then it's worth considering. But only if they stay true to what these pieces represent. The deal was struck, and soon, the first replicas hit shelves in specialty stores across the country. The response was overwhelming. Collectors praised the quality, parents bought them for their children, and a new generation began to fall in love with the timeless magic of handcrafted toys. Sales soared, and the toy line became a nationwide sensation. The recognition didn't stop there. A prominent documentary filmmaker reached out, intrigued by Sophia's grandmother's story and the museum's journey. He proposed a feature that would explore the collection, its historical significance, and the personal narrative of how Sophia had rebuilt her life around it. Though the idea of being on camera made her nervous, she recognized the value in sharing the collection's impact on a broader scale. The documentary premiered to critical acclaim, with reviewers calling it a poignant exploration of resilience, history, and the enduring magic of childhood. Sophia found herself thrust into the spotlight, attending screenings and speaking on panels about the importance of preserving cultural artifacts. Despite the whirlwind of attention, she remained grounded, always tying the conversation back to her grandmother's values and the memories that had inspired her. Her rise to prominence didn't go unnoticed by the business world. Companies began vying for partnerships, from licensing agreements to themed merchandise. Offers poured in for everything from museum-inspired puzzles to stationery lines. Sophia, ever cautious, reviewed each proposal meticulously, only greenlighting projects that aligned with her vision. She was determined that the museum's legacy wouldn't become just another commercial product. It had to remain a source of connection, education, and inspiration. One of her favorite partnerships came from a company that specialized in educational toys. They proposed a line designed to teach children about history through play, with miniature replicas of the museum's collection paired with storybooks detailing their origins. Sophia adored the concept, especially the idea that children could engage with history in such an imaginative way. The launch of the educational line brought even more attention to the museum, cementing its reputation as a cultural treasure. The museum itself benefited from the influx of resources. Sophia used the proceeds from the brand deals to expand the space, adding new exhibits and hiring staff to enhance the visitor experience. She established a scholarship fund for young artists and historians, ensuring the museum's impact reached beyond its walls. Her commitment to giving back became a cornerstone of her public persona, endearing her to fans and collaborators alike. What surprised her most was the personal recognition. She started receiving letters from people all over the country, children sending crayon drawings of their favorite toys, parents thanking her for reigniting their love of history, and even older individuals sharing their memories of similar treasures from their own childhoods. Each letter reminded her of why she had taken this journey in the first place, to honor her grandmother and to preserve the beauty of these stories. One morning, as she was going through a stack of mail, her assistant handed her an envelope embossed with gold lettering. Inside was an invitation to an exclusive awards gala hosted by a prestigious cultural organization. They wanted to honor Sophia for her contributions to historical preservation and her innovative approach to sharing history with the world. The event was a dazzling affair, attended by artists, historians, and cultural leaders. As Sophia stepped onto the stage to accept her award, she felt a lump in her throat. Looking out at the crowd, she thought of all the moments that had led her here, the heartbreak of her divorce, the discovery of the hidden collection, the countless hours spent transforming the shop into a museum. She thanked the audience with heartfelt words, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling within her. "This journey has been about more than just preserving toys or creating a museum," she said. "It's been about finding meaning in the past and carrying it forward. It's about connection, between generations, between stories, and between people. None of this would have been possible without the wisdom and love of my grandmother, who taught me the value of holding on to what truly matters." The applause was thunderous, and as Sophia stepped off the stage, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had brought her to a place of purpose and fulfillment she could never have imagined. In the years that followed, her success only grew. The book became a bestseller, the toy line expanded to include seasonal collections, and the museum welcomed visitors from around the world. Yet through it all, Sophia remained the same, thoughtful, determined, and deeply committed to preserving the heart of the legacy she had inherited. For her, it wasn't just about the recognition or the success. It was about the lives the museum touched, the stories it shared, and the joy it continued to bring. Sophia was in the middle of reviewing plans for the museum's upcoming seasonal exhibit when she received a call that stopped her cold. The voice on the other end was smooth, familiar, and unwelcome. It was Alex. "Sophia," he began, his tone light as if they were old friends catching up. "It's been a while. I heard about the museum. It's impressive what you've accomplished." Sophia paused, gripping the edge of her desk. It had been years since their divorce, years since she'd shed the last tears over his betrayal. His voice, once so charming, now carried the weight of memories she'd long since left behind. "Why are you calling, Alex?" "I was in town," he said, sidestepping her question. "Thought we could catch up. I'd love to see how you're doing." Sophia took a deep breath, her voice calm but firm. "I'm very busy, Alex. If there's something you need, say it now." "Well, if I'm being honest," he admitted, "I wanted to talk about us. About what we had and what we could have again." Sophia almost laughed at the absurdity. "Us? Alex, there is no us. That ended the day you walked out." "You don't mean that," he replied smoothly. "We were good together once, Sophia. And I see now that I made a mistake. I didn't understand your vision then, but I do now. You've built something incredible, and I think we could." "Stop," she interrupted, her voice sharp. "You don't get to rewrite history. You didn't leave because you didn't understand my vision. You left because I didn't fit into yours." There was a pause on the other end, the silence heavy with unspoken truths. When Alex spoke again, his tone was more measured, but still calculating. "Sophia, I'm serious. I want to make things right. I've changed. I see your worth now. Let's just meet and talk, one conversation, that's all I'm asking." She closed her eyes, feeling the familiar anger rise but refusing to let it consume her. "No, Alex. We don't need to meet. I've moved on, and I suggest you do the same." Before he could respond, she hung up and sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected to hear from him, but his reappearance only reinforced what she already knew: her life was better without him in it. The next few days passed uneventfully, and Sophia thought she'd heard the last of Alex. But one afternoon, as she was leaving the museum, she spotted him waiting near the entrance. He was dressed impeccably, as always, but his confident stance felt forced, as if he were trying too hard to look composed. "Sophia," he called out, stepping toward her. "I just wanted to see the museum for myself. It's truly remarkable." She stopped in her tracks, her expression neutral. "You shouldn't be here." "I just wanted to talk," he said, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just thought maybe we could start over, have a clean slate." Sophia's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "We don't need a clean slate, Alex. We're done, and we've been done for a long time." His smile faltered, and for a moment, he looked genuinely taken aback. "Sophia, don't be like this. I'm trying to make amends. I can help you with the museum, with expanding the brand. We could build something amazing together." She shook her head, disbelief mingling with frustration. "You don't get it, do you? I've already built something amazing, without you. You left when you thought I had nothing, and now that I've succeeded, you think you can waltz back in and claim a place in my life? It doesn't work like that." Alex's expression darkened, his charm slipping. I was your husband, Sophia. I have a right to what you've built. Sophia's eyes narrowed. A right? You left me with nothing, Alex. No support, no respect, no partnership. Everything I've built, I've done on my own. And you think you're entitled to a share of it now? I'm just saying, he began, but she cut him off. No, Alex. What you're saying is that you regret your decisions, and now you want to benefit from mine. But I don't owe you anything. She turned to walk away, but his next words stopped her. If you won't listen, maybe a lawyer will. Sophia froze, her back still to him. Slowly, she turned around, her expression calm but cold. You're threatening me now? I'm not threatening, he said, though his tone betrayed him. I'm just saying we were married. That means something. She stepped closer, her voice quiet but resolute. It means you had your chance, and you threw it away. You have no claim to my life, my success, or my happiness. If you think otherwise, feel free to try. But know this, Alex, you won't win. He stared at her, caught off guard by the strength in her words. For a moment, he looked as though he might argue further, but then he shook his head and walked away, muttering something under his breath. Sophia watched him go, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over her. She knew this wouldn't be the last she'd hear from him, but she also knew she was ready. She had built a life she was proud of, a life filled with purpose and joy, and nothing Alex did could take that away from her. That evening, as she sat on the porch with a cup of tea, Sophia felt a sense of peace. The storm of Alex's return had passed, and she was still standing, stronger than ever. She thought of her grandmother, of the trust and love that had guided her through the hardest moments of her life. She smiled, knowing that she had honored that trust, and that she would continue to do so, on her own terms. The museum had become more than anyone, including Sophia, ever imagined. What once seemed like a small inheritance, dismissed by many as insignificant, was now a thriving cultural hub that drew visitors from around the world. For Sophia's family, the transformation was nothing short of extraordinary. Relatives who had initially whispered about her bad luck began to speak of her resilience and brilliance with admiration. The toy shop that once seemed like an afterthought had become a symbol of creativity, determination, and heart. Margaret, Sophia's mother, was especially proud. One sunny afternoon, as they sat together in the museum's courtyard, Margaret reached across the table to take her daughter's hand. "You've proven us all wrong, you know," she said, her voice warm with affection. "Not that I ever doubted your strength, but I couldn't have dreamed you'd accomplish something so remarkable." Sophia smiled, squeezing her mother's hand. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You've always been my anchor, even when I didn't realize I needed one." Margaret laughed softly. "I just wish your grandmother could see all this. She always knew you had something special, and I think she'd be even prouder than I am." The two women sat quietly for a moment, watching as children played in the museum's interactive area and families wandered through the exhibits. Sophia's heart swelled as she thought of how far she had come, from the broken woman who had returned to her childhood home to the confident leader she had become. It was during this time of flourishing that she met Henry, a visiting historian who had come to the museum to research its famed collection. Their introduction was serendipitous. He had been captivated by the intricacy of a jeweled carousel and had been scribbling notes in a well-worn journal when Sophia approached to offer some background on the piece. "You must be Sophia," he said, looking up with a warm smile. "I've been hearing about you and this incredible place since I arrived. I don't know how you managed to bring something like this to life, but it's truly remarkable." Sophia was struck by his sincerity. Unlike the many businesspeople and investors she had met, Henry seemed less interested in her success and more intrigued by her passion. They talked for hours that day, moving from one exhibit to the next as he asked thoughtful questions about the collection and its history. Over the following weeks, Henry became a regular visitor. They bonded over their shared love of culture and storytelling, often losing track of time as they discussed everything from ancient artifacts to modern conservation techniques. Henry's kindness and curiosity were a balm to Sophia's soul, and she found herself looking forward to his visits more than she cared to admit. One evening, as they walked through the town after a long day at the museum, Henry stopped and turned to her. "Sophia, you've built something extraordinary here, but what strikes me most is the heart behind it. You don't just preserve history, you bring it to life. And, well, I think you're extraordinary too." Sophia felt her cheeks flush, a mixture of surprise and joy flooding her senses. "Henry," she began, her voice soft, "I've spent so long focused on rebuilding my life that I never imagined I'd have room for something, or someone, else. But you've reminded me of what it means to connect, to trust, and to hope." Their relationship blossomed naturally, rooted in mutual respect and a shared vision for celebrating the past while building a meaningful future. Henry became not just a partner but a source of unwavering support, encouraging Sophia to dream even bigger while remaining true to her values. As the museum continued to thrive, Sophia found herself surrounded by friends, family, and a community that had embraced her journey as their own. The toy shop, once a quiet and forgotten corner of the town, was now a place of joy and inspiration. Local schools incorporated the museum into their curriculums, and families made it a tradition to visit during holidays. Collectors and historians flocked to see the ever-expanding exhibits, and Sophia's name became synonymous with innovation and heart. One evening, the museum hosted a celebration to mark its 5th anniversary. The courtyard was alive with music and laughter, strings of lights casting a warm glow over the crowd. Sophia stood at the center, watching as children danced, parents chatted, and visitors admired the displays. Henry stood by her side, his hand gently resting on hers. "Look at what you've built," he said, his voice full of pride. "This is more than a museum, Sophia. It's a gift to everyone who steps through those doors." Sophia smiled, her heart full. "It's all thanks to my grandmother," she said. "She gave me the tools and the trust to make something meaningful. And I hope I've done her proud." As the evening drew to a close, Margaret approached, her eyes shining with emotion. "Sophia," she said, pulling her into a hug, "you've created a legacy that will last for generations. Your grandmother would be overjoyed to see how her dream has grown through you." Sophia hugged her mother tightly, her gratitude spilling over. She thought of the path that had brought her here, the heartbreak, the uncertainty, the moments of doubt, and felt a deep sense of peace. Every step, no matter how difficult, had led to this moment. As the crowd began to disperse, Sophia stood with Henry under the twinkling lights, looking out at the museum she had transformed. The future stretched before her, filled with possibilities and dreams yet to be realized. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what lay ahead. She was surrounded by love, supported by her family and friends, and filled with the quiet confidence that comes from building a life rooted in purpose and joy. Sophia took Henry's hand, her gaze steady and sure. "I think the best is yet to come," she said, her voice filled with hope. And as they walked back into the museum together, laughter and warmth following them, she knew it was true.